so many things in life that we avoid. Right? I think the most common ones that we tend to avoid would be maybe avoiding certain people. Maybe you bump into them at the supermarket, and instead of saying hi or instead of acknowledging their presence, you avoid them, right? And the other thing also we tend to avoid doing is we avoid feeling certain feelings. We avoid um, going into certain, or we avoid certain emotions that we know will come up when we face certain challenges, face certain issues, or we avoid having the important conversations that are needed in our relationships, in friendships. We may avoid, I think the difficult conversations are what we avoid the most. And sometimes, and this is a learned behavior, right, from our own parents, we avoid um, difficult conversations because we are afraid of conflicts. Okay, but we must always remember, and this is something that I always tell my clients, is that conflicts are not the problem, because conflicts allow us to deepen our relationship with each other. Conflicts allow us to understand each other from perhaps a deeper perspective. And without conflicts, things just remain the same, right? And nobody grows, nobody develops, nobody knows what's going on, nobody knows how we each feel. Now, if the conflicts, if we're not able to handle conflicts, for example, if one party behaves or doesn't have the maturity to handle conflicts, then the conflict may take a bad turn. And if the conflict takes a bad turn, it may not be a bad thing. It just means that they have outlived the friendship or the relationship. You have, grown out of it, and it is okay to part ways, right? And we have a fear of that. We have a fear of parting. We have a fear of difficult conversations. We have a fear of um, provoking in inverted commas, right? Provoking people. But if we look at it as an opportunity to deepen our understanding of self and understanding of the other person, it is not a bad thing, unless we are doing it on purpose, like purposely provoking people, just irritate them, right? I mean, that that's what children do, right? Adults don't do that, or mature people don't do that. Right? Mature people just allow whatever happens to naturally takes its course, and if there is a conflict, then it happens, and then we deal with them, right? And so we play the avoidance game because we are, I think, first and foremost, fearful of our own reaction, fearful of how we would feel, fearful of being in a strange way, when we play the avoidance game, we are actually fearful of being judged, right? And we are also fearful of being rejected, right? And so we avoid answers, we avoid dealing with things because it seems easier if we don't talk about it, if we don't face it. It's just easier, and we don't have to deal with it. We think we don't have to deal with it. We think that it will just die. It will go away by itself. But we all know that it doesn't really go away, right? Those of us who have lived on earth long enough, we know that it doesn't go away. It will come back to haunt you over and over again until you have dealt with it. Okay, so maybe some of you can give me some examples of things that people tend to avoid besides what I've already shared. What do you avoid? Do you avoid, or what kind of emotions do you want to avoid feeling? Give me some examples. Sadness. You avoid conflicts, okay? You avoid quarreling. Okay, quarreling comes from conflicts. Avoid feeling down. Okay. We avoid, what else do we avoid? Avoid anger, okay? We have a fear of emotions, all right? Avoid conflict, avoid shame, yeah, right? So most of the things, avoid embarrassment, okay, yeah. Most of these things that we avoid are it comes from emotions, right? Mostly feelings, emotions, and we just, I think, in the world that we live in, we have learned this behavior that it is not a good thing to feel. It's a learned behavior. Now, we all come with an emotional body. And because we're human, we come with an emotional body. Our emotions are meant to allow us to, experience all the different types of feelings, different types of emotions, right? And we avoid feeling them because we are really afraid of what it will make us feel. What it will make us feel will bring us back into a state where we are childlike, right? Because we learned about emotions quite early on in our lives, right, as children, and the feeling of being helplessness, right? Helplessness is a major thing. And we equate emotions or feelings with helplessness because when we first came into this world, all we knew, I mean, our intellectual state was not really there. So all we experienced were emotions, were feelings, emotions, right? And we were helpless. We were highly dependent on other people for survival. So whenever we go into any feelings or emotions, the sense of helplessness surfaces. And even though we are now adults and we know that we're not helpless, but it brings us back, right? It's the memory, it is the energy that brings us into a state of helplessness. Now, if you think about this, so for example, if you avoid um, anger, right? You avoid feeling anger because you know that when you get into the state of anger, it will bring feelings of helplessness with it. You feel like you can't control the anger. You don't know where it's going. You don't know how it's going to be directed because you feel like it is not within your control. But if you experience the anger in the body and you remind yourself that you are not helpless because you are now a grown person, that you have the power, is within your means to stop, to start, to feel, and to, hold it and not react and not direct the anger towards anyone. This reminder to self that you actually have the power to control where the emotions go, I think helps us tremendously to stop playing the avoidance game. That we don't want to deal with it because then we become accountable. So in a sense, when we become accountable to ourselves, to people, we are forced to be grown-ups.